when you were growing up, I think you probably were watching Bernard Lagat compete, and they'd always the cliche was the master tactician, right? Every single race, regardless, the master tactician. And I think now people say that about you because you find yourself in the right spot at the right time, whether that's passing on the inside, which, as you mentioned, never works, but it worked just perfectly for you. Have you gotten better at that as you've gotten more experience and are able to see things slow down? Or because to me, it's like, well, she's always kind of been good at it. So did it come with experience? Is it innate? Is it just a function of you being in really good shape so you're able to make better decisions? Like, why is Jenny Simpson so tactically sound?
I think first of all, I've had really good coaches. So between Julie Benson and Mark Wetmore and Heather Burrows, I've had really good coaches that um, coach all the way through practice. You know, you start in stretching circle and you end picking up your backpack headed towards the weight room, and they coach the entire time.
Hmm.
And that's really valuable to have a coach that's there with you in the workout when it's going well, when it's going poorly, and then also there for you, there with you in the moments kind of in between. So you can have teammates doing different things and you can learn through a lot of these instances of practice. So I've had really great coaches. I do think some of it you can't immediately teach. Like there are going to be people that just naturally are better at going over the steeple barriers than others, and some have to kind of catch up on that learning curve. So I do think maybe I was a little bit ahead of the learning curve for some reason. I have some kind of innate intuition to begin with. But I really hope that some of it is a demonstration of me just being a good student of my sport, and watching what other successful people have done, and also watching what has in the past gotten really fit, ready people, gotten them in trouble. And you
Hmm.
watch, different races, and you can say, okay, this person did this and this at U.S. championships, or they were ranked this in the world going into it, and they didn't succeed. And is it possible that it wasn't just nerves? Is it possible that it wasn't an injury in the background that we didn't know of? Is it possible that they got in there and they just made a tactical mistake? And I do think that that happens sometimes. And so, how can you be prepared for the world championship? The first thing you can do is you can be in the best shape of your life. Like that's the most
Hmm.
obvious thing. The second thing is learning how to really mentally and emotionally prepare for the amount of stress and pressure and expectation. And then I think having a plan. And having a plan is not just, I want to go in and I want to be really smart and make all the right moves and win. A plan also
Hmm.
means like having contingencies for when things go wrong, and knowing when you're going to get boxed in, what you're gonna do about it, or if you didn't plan to lead most of the race and suddenly find yourself out in front, or whatever the case may be. So I do hope that some of the skill has come from me just really caring a lot about knowing what has succeeded for others and what has failed for others. So yeah, so I hope that's a part of it.
When you watch back old races, if you ever do, or in just studying and preparing for your next big race, do you watch a race like 2017 and say, "Oh, I did that right, I did that right, I did that right," or do you go and you nitpick yourself and say, "Oh, but it would have been better if I made this decision or I stuck a little closer to her on this curve"?
It's both. I mean, it's both.
Mhm.
And the really difficult thing is when you're looking back at old races, you know what happened. So you pat yourself on the
Mhm.
back for the smart things you did. And the truth is, a lot of
Right.
times the smart things that you did were kind of a happy accident. And so learning to kind of admit that to yourself and say, okay, I did this thing that really worked well. But how much of it did I see and do intentionally, and how much of it just kind of worked out as a happy accident? But to your point, I mean, the more that you do this, it's not even about like it's not even necessarily about like the repetition of having run the 1500 so many times, but you just get an increase. There's so many permutations of how different athletes can interact with one another, and
Mhm.
different skills. Like if you have a great 800-meter runner in the mix, or you have a great 500 or 5K runner in the mix, how those strengths can kind of interact with each other. There's nearly an infinite number of possibilities how that can play out. But the more that you run it and the more that you pay attention when you're racing and then go back and see the decisions that you made and then how those shook out for you, you just have physically been present in different sticky situations. And hopefully, when it didn't work out well was like a season opener and you can make adjustments and learn from it. And by the time you get to the end of the season, but by the and then the last thing I'll say about it is that by the end of the season, when you're at the World Championships, you have a pretty good idea of where your strengths are, and
Hmm.
especially relative to your competition. So you know if you're the person that has the better chance by going out hard, or if you're the person that has a better chance on praying for a slow race and a killer kick. So
Yeah.
knowing those things about yourself and realizing that not every season is the same. 2017 for me is a perfect example. If that had been just a killer 356 race, I
Hmm.
don't think I was in the physical shape in 2017 that I was in 14, 15, and 16. So it would have been a different outcome for me, I think, if it had been hard from the gun. But then there's other years like 2013 where I just knew I'm one of the top three in the world right now, and I should go out
Hmm.
and run hard and make everybody run hard. And so I led that race. So just knowing that about yourself is a big part of having a plan for how the race will play out.
Yeah. But there must have been something deep somewhere in your brain, maybe subconscious, when you saw Hassan slide out that much that you're going to make this move that has a really low success rate, as you mentioned before. I don't know, maybe you raced her before. Maybe you could just, maybe it was body language. Do you think just instinct kicked in at that point?
Yeah, because especially in the last 150 meters of a race, there's so little oxygen now being delivered to your brain anyway.
Right.
That I think any decisions that you're making are so like intuition. And that's definitely where I think having a lot of racing experience can really be to your benefit. And there's people in the race that I think didn't do as well because they didn't have the same kind of just repetitive experience over and over and over. And so yeah, I definitely think your instincts are honed under duress when you've just done
Mhm.
this 100 times.